Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakok Radash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yashabralim, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we are known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about Esau, ratting out Esau, and we're going to get into some videos showing this. But before we get into that, let's read this. This is Psalms 64 and 8. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. So I wanted to make this lesson today because I was watching the elder Malcolm from Chicago and bringing out a really good documentary about the Amalek, the so-called Jews, the Israelis, basically ratting out the other Edomites, the American or the westernized Edomites, right? Basically the rest of the house of Esau, the house of Edom, and basically calling them the Edomites. But what we're looking at right here, this book entitled Who is Esau Edom? This book is a book created by Charles Weissman, right? This is a supposed so-called white man or a Caucasian, right? A Westerner who actually is pointing the fingers back at Amalek, okay, the so-called Jews. So as the elder Malcolm said, right now you have a fight between Amalek and the rest of the house of Esau. Basically, they're both pointing at each other, saying that each other are the house of Edom, when the truth is that they are both the house of Edom. Now, let's go ahead and read this famous book. Now, this book here, it was a couple $100 years ago. I'm not sure what the current price is now, but it was made expensive on purpose so that way you wouldn't be able to get it. Now, through the magic of the internet, PDFs of this book have been flying around and you can easily download them. Okay, now we're going to read the first two pages on the chapter pertaining to Amalek. Okay, and right here we can see how these westernized Edomites are basically ratting out Amalek, the Israelis, and saying that they're Edom. Right? It says the origin of the Jews. The Jews of today fall within two main types: the Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews. The Sephardim are also known as the Spanish Jews. So real quick, the Spanish Jews, these would be the real Jews, okay? The people, because you got to remember, after Israel, Jerusalem fell in 70 AD to the Roman Empire, a lot of Israelites fled into Africa, and many others were taken as slaves to Rome. Well, after a few years, those slaves eventually won their freedom, either through servitude or from doing good deeds. And eventually, the once slave Israelites that were living in Rome and throughout its provinces soon assimilated within the Roman Empire and became Roman citizens. And over the years, just like here in America, where so-called Negroes, Israelite Jews, were slaves, they eventually became free and they started to climb their way up the societal ladder, all the way to the very tops, to where there are top politicians who are Israelites. So just like today, this exact same thing happened in Rome. Well, eventually, around from 200 AD to about 400 AD, Rome changed over to basically being ruled by the Israelites, right? Or the so-called Jews, right? This is where your black emperors come in. This is when Rome changes from a poly-god worship, where they worship many gods, to a singular god. And they changed all of Rome around from being a pagan Rome to being a singular god Rome, ran by the Vatican, which they also created. Well, eventually, these Israelites split Rome into two. You had the Western Roman Empire, which was basically the Holy Roman Empire, and you had the Byzantine Empire, which was the Eastern Roman Empire. Byzantine fell to the Turkish people being half Arabs, half Edom, basically a mixture of them too. And the Western Roman Empire, which was the Holy Roman Empire, eventually migrated west, and it became the Spanish Empire. And these mixture of people who came from the Holy Roman Empire, these were the slaves that had gone into captivity, and they were the descendants of those Israelites who went into captivity. Okay, so when they say Sephardic Jews or the Spanish Jews, these are the Israelite foreigners who went into captivity, who eventually took over Rome and made it into their own kingdom, and ultimately would go on to rule European empires in the Middle Ages. Continuing, also known as the Spanish Jews, and constitute about 5% of the Jews of the world. The Ashkenazim are the East European Jews, which were found in Poland, Russia, Germany, and Western Asia. This group of Jews made up 90% of the so-called Jews in the world. Many references of the historical sources have unequivocally identified that the bulk of the Ashkenazi Jews were derived from the people known as Khazars. The original Jewish Encyclopedia of 1905 revealed that the main stock of the Jews came from this Asiatic people known as Khazars. The Khazars, let me actually bring this up here. The Khazars, well, actually, let's read this real quick. It says, the map showing the distribution of religions in Europe in the 10th century AD, indicating the extent of the Jews as Khazars from the Jewish Encyclopedia. So right here, you can see this was Khazaria, right? And right here, this was the Caucasus Mountains, okay? This is where Esau, these Edomites, the Caucasian race, fled to after they basically were driven out of Rome, and they stayed here for about 1,000 years. This is why around 1200 AD to 1400 AD, they started to come out into Europe, and they eventually took it over. This happened after the Great Plague had happened, and the European powers, which were ruled by Jake, the Israelites, the black people, they had become greatly politically hurt, and they were weakened as a people because of the great plagues that had come upon them. And that's what made Esau able to come up in that land, because there was a shortage of labor, and there was a need for people to help out. Okay, it says the Khazars were a nomadic people who had no traces or Hebraic culture. They had been following a pagan and sex-oriented religion until they had officially embraced Judaism in 740 AD. While rejecting Christianity and Mohammedanism, basically Islam, the Jewish author and historian Arthur Koestler also concludes that the majority of the East European Jews, and hence of world Jewry, is of Khazar and not of Semitic origin. Now that right there is not true. These Edomites, they are of Shemitic origin. Okay, they come from the line of Shem, but the difference is that they are not of the chosen seed line. They come from Esau and not from Jacob. It says, in the beginning of this book, he states, the large majority of the surviving Jews in the world is of Eastern European and thus perhaps mainly of Khazar origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Volga, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus, and that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, Uighur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Koestler then devotes the remainder of his 255-page book to prove this premise. For instances, a record of a letter by a Khazar king shows that he traces his people to Noah's son, Japheth. Now this again is ultimately a bunch of bullshit, because the Jewish people, they don't come from the line of Japheth, right? Nowhere in prophecy does it say that Japheth's descendants would be rulers of the world and that they would have the world in subjection. No. When you look at how the Jewish people got the term Ashkenazi and ultimately go, or Ashkenaz, these people always take on the identity of their women. Okay, this is why there's birth records that their kings married into the Japhetic bloodline and the Ashkenaz bloodline. So again, when they are calling themselves Ashkenazi, it's not from their bloodline that they're referring to, but it's the women of the Ashkenazi bloodline that they had married into, the Huns and all those groups of people, right? The Uyghurs and all of them. This is where they say that they were from, but they're not. They were the Edomite Amalekites that had married into the Ashkenaz line, and they then, just like always, they took on those people's culture and wore it as an identity for themselves. So right here, author Loser is wrong. It says, not Shem or to Japheth's grandson, Togarmah, the ancestors of the Turkish tribes. The Khazars' government was destroyed by the Slavs of Russia in 1016 AD. Around 1200 AD, the land was invaded by the hordes of the Genghis Khan. These two events caused large numbers of Khazars to migrate to Poland and Western Russia, forcing the cradle of Western Jewry. This is an abundance of ancient place names in the Ukraine and Poland, which derive from Khazar or Zaid, right? Jew. It says, as the Khazars left their homeland of Khazaria and migrated north and west, they lost their name and became known as Jews. Their Yiddish language and alphabet is not that of the Israelites, Phoenician Greek style, but an amalgamation of Aramaic, medieval German, Slavic, and Russian dialect. See, this is why we tell Joachim that it's very important that you study the true Hebrew, because when you're out here calling upon Yahuwah and Yeshua and using all these terms which are Yiddish, you're not actually speaking Hebrew, and that effort that you've put into trying to call out Hebrew names, it's all for naught. Again, you're basically falling for Satan's tricks. Continuing, it says the best, and here's the point, the best historical evidence, therefore, shows that the Jews are not descended directly from the Israelites of the Bible, but derive much of their ancestries from the Khazars and other people of Turkish Asiatic blood. The Khazars are also of Edomite stock. You see that? Edomite stock, and both stocks make up the present day Jews. And the historian, as the historian H.G. Wells states, the Idumeans, basically the Edomites, were made Jews, and a Turkish people, Khazars, were mainly Jews in South Russia. The main part of Jewry never was in Judea and had never come out of Judea. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, the original stock of the Khazars came from the land of Edom. You see that, Akim? So right here, H.G. Wells, the author of this book, all these people are basically pointing to these Israelis as being of Edomite stock. Now, let's go ahead and hear the other side of the argument, and let's hear Amalek, the Israelis, point the finger at their brethren.
Who does Esau/Edom represent today, and what will happen to them in the end times?
Oh, so that's really easy. So Edom is Christendom. It is the implacable enemy of the Jewish people.
The concept of Esav as Edom and as Rome was changed, transformed into a religion. So therefore, any nation that has that religion can be considered Esav. See? So therefore, it's not one nation that is now 2,000 years or whatever, but it is a religion, and any nation that has that religion predominantly is called Esav. Christianity, of course, ultimately became Western civilization. So Esav today is really Western civilization. Because Western civilization is basically Christian. And therefore that is considered to be Esav.
Esav, who became Edom, who became the Roman Empire, which metamorphosed into the Christian Empire, which became Christian civilization, which is now represented by the United States of America, will suffer a crushing, humiliating defeat.
Esau is everything that's wicked in the world, and it's the Edom. Esav is Edom. It's the final kingdom of the four kingdoms. It's the greatest, the most implacable enemy of the Jewish people. Prophesy. We have whole books devoted to the destruction of Edom at the end of days. This is the last kingdom. In traditional Jewish thinking, it's the church. It's the implacable enemy of the Jews. It's a morphing kingdom. It's unlike the previous kingdoms. It begins as Rome, and then it morphs, becomes Christian in the 4th century, and then it divides and divides and divides.
So who's Edom? Edom includes most of Europe. It includes the United States of America. It's the Roman Empire that was never destroyed.
Edom becomes America. Why? Because America is Edom, after all.
Esav, who in modern day terms is really basically, certainly one of them is America.
But for those of you who understand that Italy is the seat of the Roman Empire of Edom, even though Edom is scattered, many other nations today that speak Latin languages, that have something of the Roman Empire, including America, they are first. So Edom is everywhere, and the United States of America is also part of Edom.
Malchut Edom, which includes all of America, Europe, and some of the Western Quarter.
Who becomes the children of Esav? All of a sudden it shifts now, and we talk about Galut Edom as whom? As Rome, and eventually Western civilization.
The Edomites are the descendants of Edom, who is also known as Esau, Jacob's evil twin. Our tradition tells us that the Edomites are the ancestors of the Romans, and indeed of all Europeans and the entire Christian world.
Esav, who is the symbol of all the nations, Christians or not.
Rome is the last empire of the 4 empires that subjugated the Jewish people. Edom, Rome is the worst of all. And Edom is going to be destroyed. We have entire books in Tanakh devoted to the destruction of Edom. It's finished, it's gone, no more.
The West is Rome. According to the simple meaning, Europe and America are really one entity. But we know one thing, right? That when it comes to the classic Rome, which is Europe, they're finished.
Esav, Edom, is the implacable enemy of the Jew, and an identifying feature of it is that it's constantly morphing, changing, but it's really the same thing. It only appears different, but it's really that 4th horse that has just many different colors.
Their mark is eagle, and that's really the sign of the Romans and the Russians and the Americans and the Germans. All the evil empires, they all have the same symbol.
And it describes then this force that's going to be destroyed like a marine creature, like a fish. It should be stated, I know for most people they think that the symbol of Christendom is a cross. As it turns out, the symbol of the cross for Christianity, relatively speaking, is rather late. The early and most primitive Christian symbol is the fish because of the acronym of its name. So the fish is the ancient symbol of Christendom. It's really not until you get to the 4th century, until you get to Constantine, does the cross emerge as the chief symbol of the church. And it slithers from one place to another place because Christendom has managed not just to remain isolated and local to Rome, remain local to Edom in that area, but rather it slithers and emerges in different nations all over the world. And this has to be utterly destroyed because Christendom is the religion of Rome.
And this is written over 2,000 years ago. And in the future, the sons of Ishmael are future to arouse huge wars all over the world. Now what's going to happen? They're going to go against the entire world, the sons of Edom. And they're going to go and gather war against the rest of the world. The sons of Edom, these are the Christians. So all the Muslims, this is a prophecy from over 2,000 years ago. The Muslims are going to go and they're going to infect the rest of the world. Everywhere they're going to go, they're going to cause havoc, they're going to cause riots, they're going to cause wars, and they're going to go against the land of Edom, the nation of Edom, which in our generation, this is the Christians it's talking about.
In Isaiah chapter 63, the day of the great and terrible day of the Lord, it says that the Lord will come out from a place called Edom and he will crush Edom. Now, I'm just a broadcaster here, okay? In Jewish understanding, Edom is really talking about the Christianity, okay? Christianity is called Edom.
Say it again.
Christianity is Edom.
The Edomim, Esau was called Edom, and his descendants were known as the nation of Edom. According to Chazal, Edom is the father of Rome, what would later become the Roman Empire.
All the mountains are going to be full of blood of the corpses of Edom, because of the vengeance that Hashem is going to take from them.
Kadosh Baruch Hu will arise and will destroy completely the city of Edom and will completely uproot them.
But regarding Esau, Edom, we stress their complete destruction and that God will throw them into the endless pit of darkness and oblivion. Regarding the total obliteration of Esav, we also have an entire book of Obadiah. In verse 18 of the single chapter of that book, we read as follows: Then the house of Jacob will be like fire, the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau will be straw. They will set them alight and consume them. There will be no survivors from the house of Esau, for God has spoken.
The third, this is called Nekama Bagoim, revenge on the nations that went against us for the last 4,000 or 5,000 years. Any nation, any person that went against the nation of the Jews, there's going to be a Nekama. There's going to be a revenge. Hashem will take their blood back.
The descendants of the enemies of our people that were enemies to our people from day first are still hating us in the commandment of their ancestors, the children of Esav that hates Yaakov, the children of Amalek that hates Yaakov, the children of all the ones that had that black bitterness instead of a soul, that black, dark, horrible, depressed, negative and awful shadow as a poor replacement for a soul, still hating us, still jealous, still don't know what to do with our goodness.
To Christianity, to Edom, and that Christianity must be utterly destroyed, and that is how the full force of the Messianic age will arrive.
The spiritual heirs of the Roman Empire is the Western world, United States of America, so the USA will last until Mashiach comes.
So one of the things that has to happen is America has to fall. I mean, because the American-led world, the world order, that's the American-led order, is going to end. That's not the same as the very end that we read in the Bible. Right. So somehow we're going to see a collapse.
I mean, America is strong, but not when they're going against 3-4 armies.
It's going to take down Esau. Once we will leave this place, Hashem will bury America. That's what's going to happen. Not because I'm some kind of a prophet. I'm not giving you any prophecies here. I'm just describing to you a divine formula.
This is Mark 3:25. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And what we just watched right now, Akim, is the house of Edom fighting against itself and being divided. Each side of the house of Edom is pointing at each other, trying to throw each other under the bus. You see, now these devils, right, on both sides, they've been discovered. Everybody who looks into it comes to the conclusion that the Caucasian race is in fact the nation of Edom, and that Caucasian race also includes the Israelis that like to say that they are not Caucasian. But again, history doesn't lie, prophecy definitely doesn't lie, and it's revealed you devils for who you are. This is Jeremiah 49:10. But I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren, and his neighbors, and he is not. And what we're seeing are basically dead men walking, right? These guys are dead and don't even realize it. They're done for. Their kingdom is over, and they're just right now giving off those last couple of death throes before the end is here. See, the Lord had made a prophecy of when the end would come, and that end had a lot to do with the discovering of who Edom was in the world, right? See, they are the mystery of iniquity, right? They're the mysterious group of people that would be considered the wicked, that the Bible would give us little hints, and that it wasn't made clear until these end times when the Lord finally put the Spirit on the Israelites once He reawoke us again to go out and find this and put all these puzzle pieces together. Because why? Because these books have been out for hundreds of years in some cases, right? The historic records have been there. But what's happened is that when the Lord put it on our teachers, starting with Abba Bivens on down to the apostles, to research these historic events, put them together, find the connections, and ultimately bring out the testimony and the proof and be the witnesses that we're here to be, and tell the world, look, these are the Edomites. The Caucasian race are the house of Edom, which is why they fulfilled prophecy that they would steal the land, the Holy Land, and have it in possession till the end days. They would have in their possession the Israelites, who they keep under captivity, that they would have the world subjugated, that they would have the world upside down morally, and that ultimately they would rule by the weapon, their sword. This is 2 Thessalonians 2:3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. And we already had the falling away, right? That's where the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, we went into our captivities, we forgot who we were, right? We lost our heritage according to Jeremiah 17:4, and now we're coming back from that great falling away. And what's happening now? Well, that man of sin, the man of perdition, is being revealed. So we're right here, Akim. We are living in the last days of the last days. So hopefully this video was edifying, Akim. Until next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai B'Hashem Ruach HaKodesh. Shalom.